Hello and welcome to Connected, episode 305. It's not 305.
Isn't it?
306. It's 306.
Oh.
Hello and welcome to Connected, episode 306. It's made possible this week by our sponsors, Ahrefs, Pingdom, and Hover. My name is Stephen Hackett, and I'm joined by Mr. Federico Vitici.
Hello, Stephen Hackett.
Hello, Federico. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
How are you?
Pretty good. It's August now, which is weird, but time keeps ticking away,
Mm-hmm. Don't mention it. I know.
We're also joined by Myke Hurley.
It's a me, Michael.
It's a me, Michael. It's a me, Michele. Yes,
It's a me.
Michele.
It's a me. I have that Lego coming, and I'm so friggin' excited. The Mario Lego.
You got the Mario Lego. Mm.
I haven't got it yet. It's on the way. I did do something silly, which I need to resolve in a typical Myke fashion. So there's I think I referenced the NES Lego on a previous episode, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as well as that, Lego have the Mario sets, where they're like these little play sets with the LED eye Mario. You know what I'm talking about? You guys must have seen these. I know Federico has. Steven, have you seen these? The Mario Lego sets?
Yeah, they look great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I accidentally ordered 2 of these. Because
Why you keep doing this?
Because I don't pay attention to what I'm doing. I rush. So this is what happened. The NES Lego went up for sale, and I wanted to get that quick, and you couldn't pre-order that, right? So I ordered it fast, and then thought to myself, I want to make sure I have the Mario starter set, because if you have one of those 2 Marios, and you put it on top of the NES set, when you turn the crank, it plays the music of what's happening on the screen, which I just think is friggin' awesome. So clever. So I wanted to get that. So I did. I ordered them both, and they're both on the way. But what I didn't remember is back in April, because who knows about anything in the past, back in April when they announced the Mario sets, you could pre-order them. And I did pre-order the starter set. So now I have 2 starter sets on the way. So I guess someone's going to get that for Christmas. That's what I'm thinking.
Hopefully they're not listening.
That second set, probably my younger brother's going to get that for Christmas. That's probably what's going to happen with that one.
This is a very John Voorhees thing to do.
It is, isn't it?
It is.
I guess I'm getting to John's age, I suppose.
Yeah.
John is 33
Wow.
years old, so.
Yes, he is.
And I'm nearly there. I'm nearly
Times
there.
2.
Stephen, how old are you again?
I am
42?
34.
I thought it was 2 years.
Yeah, I heard that on
I was
Upgrade.
talking about this on Upgrade, yeah. Yeah, I forgot how old you were.
You're 34?
34,
You're 34.
Yep, I'll be 35 early next year.
Yeah. Ooh, that seems unfortunate, 35. I don't like
35 is
sound of
the
that.
age that Dante wrote the Divine Comedy.
Oh,
what are you going to do
supposedly.
in your final year before you're at that level?
Yeah.
I mean, I think my Big Sur review is going to be pretty decent.
They'll say in years to come, 35, that was the age that Stephen wrote the Big Sur review.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'll review the first iMac. I plan to do that. So I got a lot of exciting stuff, man. I'm gonna have a snack after we record. It's looking up over here.
But you're not
Yeah.
35 yet, so that won't count for the snack.
Not yet. That's true. The snack is a warm up.
You're riding into the sunset with a bunch of great stories, Stephen.
I hope it's not the sunset.
Nope, goodbye, Stephen. That's it for you. It was nice knowing you.
Oh boy. All right, let's do some follow-up. Discontent with our NASCAR coverage, listener Michael has now created an F1 car based
Yes,
on
this
Crazy
is-
Star
this
Wars.
is it.
Mike.
No, it's not me.
Listen.
It's
Okay.
it's not me.
It's not, okay.
And it's
Wow.
spectacular.
It's so good.
Oh my God.
It's
Oh
very
my God.
good. This is it for me. This is what I'm looking for.
This is amazing. Couple of questions. I mean, I appreciate it, but why is the Club Mac Stories logo in there?
Because it's all okay. So Formula One cars are covered in sponsors. So
No, that I get.
Right.
It just feels like it was pretty like relay themed.
Well,
But I do appreciate
it's the
like,
themes
you
of
know,
the three of us, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay,
arguably, I
okay.
have the least to do
You
with
do.
this F1 car, although Myke was right, does sit just over the air intake.
Myke was right.
But there's something that is related to all of us, right? 512 Pixels is on there.
Right.
We have the weird fish on there.
Remember the milk is on here.
Remember the milk, the dog cow,
Yep.
the Macintosh, the seal of quality is in there.
Mhm.
Yep.
This is really well done.
It's really
This
good.
is really well done. Yeah, I like it.
It's very nice.
Mhm.
Are you still following Formula One,
Oh,
Myke?
so badly, man. I love it.
Any key updates that we should know about?
One of the races has coronavirus.
Oh, okay.
thought we talked about that.
Goodbye then.
I don't
no.
know. Because they went they went home. They left the
Ah.
country and they now have coronavirus. So
That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate.
he's doing okay though, you know, but he does have it.
I did
That's
see the
good.
clip where the guy finished with a flat tire, which seems like a miracle to
I've
me.
seen that on the news as
He
well.
was going
I've-
like 140 miles an hour with 3 wheels.
It's unbelievable.
Wow.
And it happened on the final lap. It was incredible. You could
That was
see
Hamilton,
It
right?
was Lewis Hamilton, of course. Second
Yeah.
place was like coming around the last bend, right? It was like catching up to him because obviously like Lewis was going slower because he had 3 wheels. It was a thrilling end to the final race. So I'm really loving F1, boys. I'm it. Like I don't, you know, I just want to say I'm not the person who keeps bringing it up. People keep bringing it up around me and they get me talking about it. But
Yeah.
I'm loving it. I'm a big
Got
sports
that.
boy now.
I'm just telling you, if you ever want to practice, there's a circuit very close to our place here.
I don't
You can
think
go
you
there.
understand.
You can practice.
What
you
am I
start very
practicing?
Start very slow with like a go-kart or something.
Right. Formula
Yeah,
One
go
isn't
from-
like soccer, you know, like you can't go play Formula One with your friends.
Can't you just practice Formula One?
I don't think
Just
so.
like- I feel like Formula, you'd be like, I feel like Formula One in today. It's just like, let me drive at 200 kilometers an hour. I'm just telling you, if you ever change your mind, we have like an actual circuit. Do you call them circuit? Oh, tracks. What do you call them?
It
Circuits,
depends.
Tracks.
They could be circuits or
Okay.
tracks, yeah.
Okay.
Do you know the name of the circuit that you're talking about?
Well, I'm actually. Let me double check.
This is important.
That is like
Googling.
I don't think it's enabled. Okay, so Vallelunga circuit. Let's see. Held the Rome Grand Prix.
Wow.
Okay.
Vallelunga circuit. Look at that.
Yeah, being used by the new configuration has received homologation from the FIA as a test circuit being used by various Formula One teams.
Yep. Unfortunately, it's not one of the ones in the actual calendar, but it is used in some regard. So there you go. ACI Vallelunga circuit
Yes.
will be in
yes.
the show notes because people need to know.
Yes, and it's like I would say 30 minutes away from here. So yeah, 20 miles north of Rome. Yeah. I remember correctly.
You would think
So
it was
if you
a
ever
slow
wanna-
news week.
If you ever
But
want to practice,
it
I
isn't.
mean, look at those sweet bends. Can you imagine you just driving there?
Yep.
Risking your life for the glory of the show. That would be incredible.
Yep. That's what I need to
Anyway.
do. Formula One before I have my driving license.
It's a beautiful idea.
I have some bad news. Green Gate continues to take over the world.
This is not a thing like this and the year of Stephen. Like,
The thing that you are referring to has absolutely zero to do with
see
the previous issue.
Oh, it's green and it happened to me. That's literally
Oh,
the whole
jeez.
basis of it.
Then your avatar on Twitter is also suffering from Green Gate.
Just the left side of it.
Right, okay. It's partial green. Can you explain to people that can't see what we're talking about, please?
Yes, there's a link in the show notes to this. I have Big Sur on my MacBook Pro, and in Beta 3, I don't actually know about Beta 4 yet, but in Beta 3 at least, when I start it up, all of the touch bar buttons are lime green except the dim brightness button. But the increased brightness, the keyboard brightness controls, the volume controls, all just bright green. And you log in, and then after a minute, it goes away and it acts normally. But I love that something has happened where the touch bar finally got an update. That's the real news
Yeah.
here.
People are always complaining that nothing's happening with the touch bar. but something new has happened with the touch bar. So, job done.
Bright green. I mean, how do you even come across a bug that does that? I'd love to know how these things work. The chat room is calling it green, sir. So
that's
good.
We're
going to go with.
What is green in Spanish?
Verde is in Italian, so I want to say verde maybe in Spanish.
Yeah, I think that's it.
So this would be what? Verde sur? If you want to give it a go, Federico, because I can't do it.
Let me just double check.
It is verde, but it's with I can't roll the R's.
Are you sure that it's... Let's see, Spanish. Okay, it's verde. Yeah. So, verde sur.
There you go.
The verde sur.
There you go.
Yes,
green
yes.
sir.
Very good. Very good. Yes.
I have not, by the way, seen this on my iPhone. So the green gate has migrated from my phone to my laptop.
It hasn't.
It has.
It's a different thing.
It hasn't. This is like we are talking about nothing here. Like you just had a bunch of green buttons.
Yes. It's completely 100% unrelated to what had happened to you last time.
You're not a software developer.
So the screen of your iPhone slightly tinting green.
Yes.
Is the same issue as the buttons on your touch bar being green some of the time when you're logging in.
Yeah, it's a bonjour bug. The green traveled across the network.
It's a bonjour bug. Mm-hmm. Do any devices still support that old technology?
Everything. Yeah, bonjour is everywhere. That's how you print. It's how you do file sharing. It's all there.
Sure. Really? Mm-hmm. Is this called bonjour?
Yeah.
Bonjour, Big Sur.
Bonjour, Mademoiselle.
Oh, my
this
God.
This is Federico. Oh, yes. Bonjour. Bonjour is a beautiful word, I think.
It is a beautiful word, isn't it?
I really like the sound of the French language, but I cannot, I don't understand a single word of it. But I really do love the sound of it.
It's the language of love.
But I can only say 3 words in French.
Which are?
Bonjour, mademoiselle, are 2 of them.
Okay. What's the third one?
Merci.
Good. They are 3. They're correct. They are 3 French words.
S'il vous plaît,
well,
which is more like an
expression. You've got up to 5 or 6 now.
Yeah. And then I know a bunch of names of football players. That doesn't really count.
That's not a word, no.
I know a bunch of names of boroughs in Paris.
None of those.
Montmartre, for example.
Okay.
That doesn't apply.
You sell yourself short. A minute ago, you only knew 3 words, and now it's infinite.
I actually know a bunch of... I can speak French.
You can move,
guys.
You can move now.
I can go. Okay. All right. Bye. Let's do the show. I got to catch a plane to Paris.
Good luck.
Let's go.
Best of luck to you.
Bonjour used to be called rendezvous, and then they got sued.
Really? So it's always been a French name.
Yeah, they got sued by Tipco Software, which I don't know, but my guess is they're not in business anymore. Because this is in 2005.
Well, they probably cashed out when they won that old Apple lawsuit.
Yeah, and then Apple had to change it to Bonjour, which is a better name anyway, I think. Oh, real-time follow-up. Tipco
still
very much alive.
They're strong.
Mm-hmm.
They
fuel the modern enterprise through Tipco Connected Intelligence.
Well, don't we all, though, really, if you think about it? They IPO'd at one point.
They have a COVID notice on top of their website because everyone has to do that.
They have...
they make it possible to unlock the potential of your real-time data for making faster, smarter decisions.
That's nice.
Pretty good. Way to go.
Way to go, Tipco.
Big bonjour energy.
Okay.
We want to talk about Phil?
Yeah.
Okay. So yesterday, as we record this... it was announced, amongst other things, which we'll get to, is that Phil Schiller is stepping out of the SVP of Worldwide Product Marketing. He's held that title for a long time. He's been at Apple for 30 years, which is just an incredible run. He is becoming an Apple Fellow, which if you're not familiar with this, Myke, you mentioned this link in Upgrade. We'll have it again here. It's a list of basically all dudes who worked for Apple at some point who have great history with Apple, and they get sort of awarded this title.
Which is not an Apple felon, by the way.
Oh, that's nice. That's a different thing. This is all men, and I didn't notice this when I was recording Upgrade, and I saw a few people mention it afterwards. And there are many prominent women who have worked for Apple. Just to name one name would be Susan Kare, right? Who is responsible still to this day for a lot of the iconography that we see in the operating system, right? Like things came from the work that Care did years and years and years ago.
Yep.
Like it's wild that they wouldn't have put. It's not even the idea of like, oh, this should be a more diverse list, but just like to have this list of people and Care not to be in it is.
No, it just
seems
feels
very
incomplete.
strange. Yeah.
Like it just feels incomplete. Like how is she not in? Like she of all people should be in
Yeah.
there. Yeah. Also, who are these other people? Like
There's so many names here. I have
Don
no idea.
Norman and Rich
That's a great name
Page.
too. Don Norman. It's just
Rich Page feels like what I would
Yep.
tell my editor when I send my drafts. Oh, it's a Rich Page.
That's good. This is a
Enjoy.
Rich Page edit. Yeah, there are people that I have no idea who they are. So it's kind of, if you look at this site, all of the names in red I've never heard of, and the names in blue I have heard of, which makes sense because the names in red don't have corresponding
Although
pages
you gotta
in this
say,
wiki.
like you gotta say, what a name, Gary Starkweather.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like, what's your last name? Starkweather.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, I don't want to mess with this guy. Starkweather.
Don Norman worked on, he kind of like put together the idea of user experience. He worked for Apple in the 90s. And Gary Starkweather was also at Apple in the 90s and invented color management technology. So like color sync and things to keep your display color accurate
ya.
over time. He did a bunch of that
Oh,
stuff.
no.
And
He just recently passed
he
away.
passed away at
Oh.
Christmas last year.
Why did we
Oh,
make a
no,
joke of
I'm
his
so
name?
I'm so sorry.
I would like to apologize to the Starkweather family.
I also apologize.
Mm-hmm.
You have a great name. though.
Oh, he used to work at Xerox.
Yeah,
too.
yeah, a lot of Xerox Park
What a guy.
DNA in this list. Rich Page,
Oh,
by the
wow.
way, he was one of the first 4 Apple Fellows. He worked on early compilers and hardware development. In fact, he brought in the Motorola 6800K family of microprocessors for the Lisa
All right,
Macintosh.
we're not doing a great job here of like pointing out that it this should be a more mixed list, and then
Yeah.
just spending time listing the accomplishments of all of the men on this list that we never
Yep.
heard of.
He
we-
later rage quit
Oh,
next.
geez,
so.
we're still doing it. All right, let's actually go back to talking about Phil Schiller, right?
Yes. So he's an Apple Fellow. He still has a job at Apple. He's not just like hanging out in the pool, I guess. He will continue to lead the App Store and Apple Events, which is the team that I guess puts on events. There's a thing in the press release about how he led the effort to make WWDC 2020 virtual. And I think that's cool. I think he did a good job with that. I think we all liked how that went. So he is still going to be doing those things, but the worldwide product marketing job is now going to Jaws, who has also been at Apple for a long time, 20 years, I think. And I think I think he does a good job where we see him, and we've seen him more over the years. And so I think he's got big shoes to fill, but I think he's up for the job.
I feel like I don't really know a lot about Jaws.
Hmm.
Like I feel like I see him, every now and then, but like I don't feel like I have as much of a like, oh, I know what this person's about as I do some of the other people that are on like Apple's executive leadership page. Maybe that's going to change now. We'll find out, I guess.
I do think that the timing of this is kind of interesting. Now, let me just say up front how I think Phil had an incredible career, and working for such a long time at any company is an accomplishment in itself. To do this, like to work at the same place for over 30 years, I think it's an amazing achievement. And we all know how like this person has led like some pretty incredible projects over the years. And I don't think, I tip my hat to this kind of career. However, at the same time, like in 2020, I think your mind goes, or at least my mind goes to the timing of this. And I've seen some tweets about this from Ben Thompson and Steve Chatton-Smith. I don't know. Obviously, I know nothing, right? This internal dynamics. I have no idea what's going on actually, but it doesn't really surprise me that this is happening now, of all time periods in the history of Apple, with all the things going on around the App Store and the antitrust cases going on. Now, obviously, like Apple is saying how Phil is still going to continue to lead and oversee the App Store. I do agree with Ben Thompson's take from yesterday. Like he wrote, I'd be really surprised if he's still overseeing the App Store in 6 months. I think 6 months maybe a little too short a time frame, but I would be really surprised if he's still overseeing the App Store in a year. That's what I would say. I don't think it's a coincidence. This is happening now. I don't think a lot of people on Twitter, especially a lot of folks who follow Apple, I don't think they have a grasp just to how bad the antitrust stuff is going to be, both in the US and in the EU. And I don't think Apple is getting away with this easily. And I think Apple must be pretty aware of this, right? And I think if you know that something's going down over the next several months, obviously you want to be prepared. Obviously you got to have a transition of power. You got to show that you're changing, and you got to show that you are making changes for whatever's going to happen. And so I personally believe, again, without taking away anything from Phil's career, that's out of the question. But as far as the modern App Store goes, and as far as the politics surrounding the antitrust cases go, I think that maybe this current situation accelerated this process, right? I mean, obviously Phil turned 60, so he's had an incredible career. Could have still worked at Apple, I don't know, but I do feel like maybe, all these things going on accelerated this process of, it's the same thing that happened with Johnny Ive, and when we were saying, oh, he's obviously on his way out.
When he became chief design officer.
When he became a lot of people were really upset and like, how can you say that this is now, it means he's retiring, it means he's gonna be more important now. It's like, and we were saying at the time, no, this is obviously the sign of Johnny slowly but surely retiring from Apple. And sure enough, that happened a couple of years later. And I think this is, at least for me, very reminiscent of that in terms of like the dynamic. Maybe like, it feels like there's a, I don't know, maybe this is just my feeling. It does feel like there's more sympathy towards Phil than Johnny. I don't know how, just my personal feeling. Like,
well, the reason is because Phil gave a personality to the world where Johnny was more shut off by his own decision. I just wanted to clarify a point for you, if that's okay, Federico, because you referenced Ben Thompson, and he on the Dithering podcast that he does with John Gruber, he kind of clarified his point a little bit, which is slightly different to what I think his original tweet seemed to indicate. He doesn't, if I'm summing up his point correctly, which I may not be, is basically saying that he actually probably has stayed as the head of the App Store because of what's going on right now, not that he is leaving Apple because of what's going on right now. Right. So it's like they maybe don't want to say that the App Store's under somebody else's control right now because it's going to be a tough job. So like they will have him do it. But the idea of him, as I don't know if you're saying this, but I've seen people say this, the idea of Phil leaving Apple because of the App Store stuff is incredible. It just doesnment make, it's very unlikely. It doesn't make sense to me either, because if your thought was like, oh, I need to run away from this, like if there was going to be like legal challenge against you just because you don't work for the company anymore, doesn't mean that stops.
Of course.
I think the thinking here is like that very clearly the guy just wants to retire, right? Like, he's been, as you said, 30 years at the same company. He's turned 60 this year. Like, he probably just wants to change what he's doing.
Maybe.
The idea of him moving away, and frankly as well, like, no one was going to take over Schiller's entire role, like, because Schiller does like 3 different things, which is a thing that we see happen with Apple executives. Deirdre O'Brien's the same, right? Where like Deirdre now runs 2 very different parts of the company, really, right? You got the people and retail. They are different things. So, and like Schiller does a bunch of stuff. So Jaws will take his place in the marketing side, and then eventually they'll find somebody to run events and App Store. But you kind of maybe want to unbundle it and wind it down. And as well, this kind of feels like a transition plan, really, more than anything, right? Like, it's not, this feels to me not the idea of like Schiller's like, I gotta get out of here. But that over the last couple of years, he's been making it clear to Tim that it's like, I'm kind of good now. And they're like, great, well, let's work out how we wind this down, right? Which is different to, say, Angela Arendt, who was like, very clearly, this is done, right? Like one way or another, because it came out of nowhere and she was gone, right? Like the next day, gone. Mm-hmm. And this is more of a, like, I guess very similar to Johnny Ive, right? Like, I want to step away now. And they're like, great, we're going to work out this plan, this transition. And so first you're going to give this part away, and then maybe in a year you'll give this part away. I completely agree that within a year, Phil is gone, I would expect.
I mean, that's very likely. As a person myself, like I tend to be very skeptical of these transitions whenever there's something else going on at the same time. So while everything that you said makes sense, I cannot avoid considering the timing of it.
This is the human, and I'm not saying that you're doing this, but this is like the human nature for like conspiracies. Right? But like, I mean, and I'm not saying it's a conspiracy, but it's like, it's how people, it's this idea of looking for cause and effect, right? Which is something that we do as humans all the time. Right? We look for cause and effect. And you see this and you're like, well, this thing is happening. It seems very convenient that they would be attached to each other and that your brain just makes the link between these two things, and that's that, right? I'm not saying that you're creating a conspiracy theory. If you want to create one and talk about it here, I will entertain that because I like hearing wild conspiracy theories. But yeah, I get your point, right? That it's like, it seems mighty convenient that the guy who's been running the App Store maybe doesn't want to be around to run the App Store in a year because it's about to get really difficult to run the App Store. Right? Like, I see that logic too, and can imagine that if Phil wasn't thinking of it, he maybe would have started thinking of it, right? To be like, I think in a year it might be really hard to run App Store at Apple because you have to start implementing what the governments around the world want you to do with the App Store, right? Am I kind of summarizing what you're saying?
What I'm saying is that there's some big changes coming to how the App Store operates. And by the time that happens, you want to make sure that you have new people in charge.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a big conspiracy. I think it's when you look at it from the outside. And I guess some people don't expect that anything is going to change with the App Store. Some people say that the government is crazy to have this case against Apple. But I think there will be big changes happening. And by the time that inevitably happens, both in the US and in Europe, you want to make sure that you have a new structure in place. That's all I'm arguing. And for that reason, yes, Phil may want to retire, but I'm very skeptical of the timing of this. And to answer some of the comments that we're getting in the chat room, I think whenever, people have these discussions about executives leaving a company, first of all, because they are very public figures. And second, because, history teaches us that there's always a backstory, right? Especially with high-profile executives leaving Apple in recent history, there's always been a backstory. And so the pattern teaches us that there's always more hiding beneath the surface, which I think makes for a fun, exercise in analysis, makes for a fun conversation. And especially now with everything happening around the App Store, I think it would be, kind of short-sighted not to consider the circumstances. I mean, you can ignore them, but that's not how I usually operate. Sometimes, being skeptical all the time, sure, is not a great way to live, but sometimes you're right about it. And so that's why I consider the circumstances. And maybe I'm wrong, but I mean, it's a fact, right? It's happening now, these antitrust cases. So it's even though you don't believe it, it's at the very least something that you should mention.
I think that it would be wild to not at least consider it. It's like, I'm agreeing with you. There is a cause and effect potentially at play, right? Like, you would at least talk about it. Like, if this was, if Phil didn't run the App Store, we wouldn't be talking about this.
No, exactly.
Right? So, if, I don't know, who is another app? I don't even remember everybody's people. It's like, so if Dan Riccio, Senior Vice President of Hardware Engineering, left, we wouldn't be going, what about the App Store? Right? Like, it wouldn't come up. because it doesn't make any sense. Can I just say one last thing about this, maybe before we move on, which I kind of found funny? There's just this one line which I just really like where Phil says, this is a quote from Phil. Where is it? It's about his friends. And he only referenced, here we go. It's been a dream come true for me to work at Apple on so many products I love with all of these great friends, Steve, Tim, and so many more. And I just kind of like that because it's like, who's he leaving out? Right? Because he only mentioned Steve and Tim.
Scott should have been mentioned.
Right, like makes perfect sense to mention Steve, obviously. So therefore, you would definitely mention Tim because that would be terrible, right? Like if he just said Steve and so many more, like you kind of got to mention Tim. He's your boss, but like there are many colleagues he's not mentioned, right? Like, does he secretly hate Craig Federighi? Who knows? I just find that funny. Like, obviously, you should probably stop at Steve and Tim because then you're definitely going to leave people out. But it was just funny to me anyway.
It's a big move for a company that has relatively stable people at the top.
Is it possible that he is the current, like, longest tenured employee?
No, I don't think he's the longest tenured employee, but he's the longest tenured person on the executive page.
Right. So there are people that are still working at Apple for longer than 30 years?
Yeah, Chris Espinosa comes to mind, for one.
Wow.
He was there early on.
That's incredible.
But I think he is the longest running executive. And I mean, think about how long he's been there. He not only came to Apple when it was kind of a weird move to do so, but stayed through the 90s, survived the jobs transition, right? Like you would think a product, like a marketing person would maybe not, I don't know his title exactly when Jobs came back, but he survived a lot of change. And I think he's adapted really well to current Apple, where when Jobs was around, he did a lot of the heavy lifting. Phil slid into that spot really well. And as they've done a lot to diversify the people they have on stage and the voices we hear from Apple, he's done a good job at stepping aside and letting other people have their time. And I look at that and I look at the flexibility that he, at least from the outside, has shown in his career. And I find it inspiring a little bit that somebody who has such a long career at one place can change and adapt and be successful through several different eras.
It doesn't surprise me that he never left, because like if marketing is what you love to do, is there a better company to work for? Right? Like Apple's marketing is incredible, right? Like it's arguably one of the reasons that they are as successful as they are in modern times. Like, unless you wanted a specific challenge, right? Like I want to turn a company around. Like if you want to work on marketing, especially if you want to work on marketing and technology, like why would you leave? So it doesn't surprise me he was there for so long. And he's still there. He's not gone yet.
This episode of Connected is brought to you by Ahrefs. Do you work for a big brand, or maybe you run a small business, you're a freelancer? No matter where you land on that, getting traffic to your website can be a real challenge. There's a lot of competition out there. So Ahrefs serves as the all-in-one SEO toolset that solves the problem of getting people to your site. It gives you the tools you need to rank your website in Google and gets you tons of search traffic. Look, I'll just be honest, SEO seems like a big mystery to me, but going through the Ahrefs tools, using their dashboard makes it really simple to understand what's going on, understanding what you should improve, and then seeing the results. Ahrefs uncovers how your competitors are getting traffic. You can see the pages and content that send them the most views and get an estimated search volume with their Keyword Explorer tool. So you can see how well a piece of content is likely to perform before you write it. Ahrefs has a bunch of useful stuff. Content Explorer can help you find guest blogging opportunities. Rank Tracker, which lets you track progress on your keywords. It'll even help pick up broken backlinks and help you get them fixed. So take the mystery out of SEO. Go to ahrefs.com. That's ahrefs.com. Little HTML joke. ahrefs.com. And sign up for their 7-day trial for just $7. You'll get reports on your website, you'll see what's performing well, and figure out your next move. So whether you have a personal website you want to gain a following on, or your company needs traffic to convert into sales, go there now, ahrefs.com, to get that $7 trial. Our thanks to Ahrefs for their support of the show and Relay FM. Federico, there's new iMacs.
Mm-hmm.
You excited about
Very
this?
exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I can
Much more than my stupid conspiracy theories.
Hey,
Very exciting.
come on.
Hey,
This is very exciting. Let's move away from conspiracy theories and talk about iMacs.
I wasn't saying it was a conspiracy theory.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what's new in the iMac?
maybe there's conspiracy theories about it.
No, there definitely is. There definitely is.
So the 21-inch iMac stays the same. The only change is SSDs are now in all the default configurations. They're pretty small. They start at, I think, 256 gigs. So the Fusion drive remains an option on the 21.5-inch iMac. Everything else is the same. Older processors, older GPUs. They still have the 1080 display, so that base 1099 iMac. Still not 4K Retina. It's just hanging out down there at the bottom as the only non-Retina computer Apple sells, which is sad. The 27-inch is where all the news is. So just to quickly move through this, SSD across the board up to 8 terabytes on the upper end. They all come with the T2 security chip now. It was the last Mac not to ship with that. So the 21-inch does not have it because you can get the Fusion drive, but the 27 does. Higher RAM ceilings up to 128 gigabytes of memory. Much better GPUs with up to double video memory. It got the fancy microphone system. It got 1080p webcam. The top end is a 10-core i9, which you can spec to, which is bananas. And something that really surprised me, I didn't see coming, the nano texture option on the Pro Display XDR is available on the 27-inch iMac. It's $500 here as opposed to the $1,000 it is on the Pro Display. But that's really cool. I did not see that coming. I'd like to see the nano texture show up on more and more products. I think it's really cool.
The nano texture thing is my favorite part of the announcement because it opens the door for future products to get that now. Because it was something we'd hoped and kind of assumed that if Apple could find a way to make it a thing on other products, they could.
You may be thinking that sounds like an iMac Pro to me.
That sounds like an iMac Pro.
And it is. So it has lots of RAM. It has better GPUs. It has the 1080p webcam, which the iMac Pro had. To account for this, Apple has dropped the 8-core Xeon from the base iMac Pro. So the base iMac Pro now comes with a 10-core Xeon W processor. The rest of the iMac Pro is the same. No new video card, even though it needs one. No updated Xeon. No nano texture option. So the iMac Pro is just kind of hanging out there, unchanged now for coming up on 3 years, which is I really think the iMac Pro is. I don't think it's going to survive the Intel to ARM transition. I think it's going to die with a Xeon and not be resurrected on the other side. What do you think about that, Myke? Do you think it's over for the iMac Pro?
I think it's becoming more likely that it's not going to be needed anymore. Like, there's no point continuing to make the iMac Pro if the iMac can be as powerful or more so, which could be possible after the Apple Silicon transition. So I think it's at a point where it just may not be needed. And also, we were talking about this on Upgrade a little bit. The iMac Pro was conceived in a very different time.
Yeah.
The iMac Pro was conceived when there was no Mac Pro. There was not going to be another Mac Pro, is a better thing to say. And so they continued with that computer because they had to plug the gap before the new Mac Pro would be ready. And so they went with it, right? Actually, I think when they showed it off, they hadn't had that round table yet, had they? Or had they? No, they had, hadn't they? They first mentioned it in that round table thing, and then they showed it off at WWDC.
That's right.
A little later on. Now, I think it's fair to say that, like, if Apple would have continued with the Mac Pro and continued wanting to invest in the Mac Pro, they never would have made the iMac Pro. They would have just continued to make the iMac more powerful, as they have done anyway, right? Like, the iMac Pro has not stopped them from making the iMac a better computer because, as you said, like, this one is pretty much it, and in some ways is better than, so much so that they got rid of the base model iMac Pro, right? Like, was it the 8-core or the 6-core?
Yeah, it's gone.
They got rid of it because it's not competitive enough anymore, and then they brought the price down of the 10-core to start at 5,000. So I think that they're further proving that even in the current climate, before Apple Silicon, the need for the iMac Pro is becoming less and less. I think once we move past this, what's the point? Like, if you could just keep speccing iMacs up to be super powerful, why have a different product line? You're just confusing things.
I think so too. I mean, the iMac Pro still has headroom over the iMac, but it is a smaller gap than it used to be, a gap that may not matter by the time Apple Silicon rolls around. I do think that this 27-inch iMac, the 5K, is going to be around for a while. This is a very meaningful update, and we can talk about whether it's the last update or not in a second. But this machine could sit on the shelf for 18 months and I think be okay. And that does make me think that the current roadmap to ARM is maybe notebook heavy at first, and that the iMac would follow a little bit later on.
Well, they didn't touch the 21.
That's true, and it may be
Really?
that they replace. I don't think the 21 will survive either. I think the rumor is a 24-inch. 21.5 is pretty small. I don't know the last time anyone sat in front of one of those, but it's pretty small if you're used to something bigger, and maybe that one goes ARM and the bigger one stays Intel a little bit longer. I don't know if they would split the iMac that way.
Can I test your memory here a little bit?
Yes, please.
When they moved the MacBook Pro, the 13-inch, to the Magic Keyboard, what else did they do to it?
I think it came with a spec bump.
Yeah, but I'm trying to remember what kind of specs were bumped. Basically, what I'm trying to posit here is that the
I remember what they did. They added that one is the one that can go up to 32 gigabytes of RAM, and they added a bigger storage option.
Okay.
So it because of new processors, it was a spec bump with a keyboard.
Right. Because what I'm trying to draw a line here is to say that the 16-inch, the 15 became the 16, it got a big revision. The 27 to the new 27 is a big revision.
Yeah.
But the 13-inch MacBook Pro and the 21.5-inch iMac got some changes that were arguably necessary changes for both. Like, the iMac didn't get as much as the MacBook Pro. The reason I'm saying all this is because maybe those models aren't going to be as long in the world as the more expensive models in their lineup.
Sure.
Right? So that, we may see... I genuinely think we're going to see a consumer laptop. I don't know what it is. I don't think it's going to be the Air. I'm not sure. The MacBook Pro and the iMac 21-inch, they will be the first things. This is not a completely original thought. I'm just putting my stake in the ground, right? They will be the first three Apple Silicon Macs, so they can have cool consumer options and showing the power, which will be what the MacBook Pro will do. That's probably what's gonna happen, and that might be why the current the smaller iMac kind of didn't really get touched at all, to be honest.
Maybe it's up sooner in the ARM list.
Which I think makes sense too, right? If you're gonna do it a desktop, well, that's the desktop you'll start with. You don't start with the iMac Pro if they're gonna do one. And to be honest,
do the iMac and the Mac Mini.
Yeah, I think when we say the iMac Pro won't exist anymore, it's the idea of there being an iMac which is different. That is a different computer. The internals of it are different, right? It is designed separately. It has a different cooling system. They may have a version of the Apple Silicon iMac that's painted gray, and they just call it the iMac Pro, and it's just a higher level. But the idea of there being this completely separate machine, which looks like an iMac but kind of isn't in the insides, it's very different. I don't think that's going to exist anymore.
Yeah, I think that tracks. That does bring up a point about these iMacs, is that as far as we know, no one's taken one of these apart yet, but Apple didn't mention it. I think they would have if it would have been done. The cooling system has not been iMac Pro-ified, and it doesn't have the overhaul that the iMac Pro got. Now, the big one doesn't have a 3.5-inch drive in it anymore. I don't know how they're doing the SSDs, but at the very least, it should have better airflow, but it does not have the cooling the iMac Pro does, and that could be a little noisy on the 10 core. Maybe we'll have to see how it goes. And Jason is providing real-time follow-up. The cooling system is not an iMac Pro cooling system, so it is the same fan layout as the previous 5K.
So I'm sure in Cinebench, the iMac Pro will still be able to be, like in some benchmark, it's not going to get throttled. But like, I just don't know how important that stuff is.
So anyways, good day if you're an iMac. I think if you've been holding out for an iMac, this is a good time to update. This is the biggest update the iMac's had in a while. And that brings us to the question of, is this the last Intel iMac? Are we going to see another 27-inch update? I don't think we will. I think that because this update is so meaningful, they've done so many things that this 27-inch iMac can last a while, and I think it buys them enough time to get an Apple Silicon 5K iMac out the door. I think that this is sort of the last hurrah for the Intel iMac.
I would say if I was going to make this some kind of pick,
Oh, yeah.
this will be the last time the new badge is on the Apple Store for any Intel Mac.
Really? No more Intel updates after this?
That doesn't mean no more updates. Like, the Mac Pro gets updates, but they don't put the new badge on it.
Well, no, the Mac Pro gets new components you can put in it.
Sure. Yeah,
that's not a product update. I mean,
I'm
they're
not saying that that's definitely going to happen. I'm just doing what we do with picks. But like, I think that it's possible. Like, yes, you could do it. You could update the Mac Mini, but I don't think they will. Right? Like, so I can't. I could see a world in which this is the last major update for an Intel machine, like major update. Like they'll continue doing stuff to the other computers, but I don't think they'll be major enough. We'll see.
Anyways, that's iMac news. Kind of a fun. It's been a very busy week for August. Very, very strange. Usually very quiet this time of year.
Yep. Because everyone's at work, no one's going on vacation.
It's not a time of year where tech companies do a lot of releases.
Yeah, because people go on vacations.
Yeah.
And no one's doing that. So why stop?
I'm going.
Well,
yeah, but you're in a country that has its act together. I mean, it's different.
And also, on your vacation, you write an iOS review the whole time. So that doesn't count. But like the idea of like shutting down for the summer season, which is something that happens in corporations, like it just isn't happening this year. So we just keep working. We'll all just keep working.
Do you guys think they have more coming in August?
Yes.
Is that a yes because you think, or is that a yes because you've heard?
No, it's a yes because I think. Like, just that thing that we spoke about last week, which that wild the set of predictions. I just think that I think that Apple potentially still has a lot in the pipeline this year, and they may as well start getting it out while they can, especially because if they have products they can sell that are new, they will want to do that because of the quarterly results, because they've already said that the iPhone will be slipping. So no iPhone will be sold in their fourth fiscal quarter, new iPhone, right? It's all going to go to Q1, the holiday quarter, because they're not going to come out until October. So I would expect that if Apple has new products to sell that they're otherwise holding on to, I would expect them to put them on sale. And that would include stuff like AirPods, AirPods Studio, HomePod, that kind of stuff, if they have them. If you got them, sell them.
Have you guys changed your mind on the iOS? I'm going to talk about iOS 14 in a few minutes. Have you guys changed your mind on the release date? You're still thinking they're not going to change it? Are they going to postpone it now that they have said the thing about the iPhones?
I don't know, man. Because I still don't feel like I can put... So what we're saying is that Apple has said that the iPhones are coming a couple of weeks later this year, which means they'll be in October. But I still can't put my finger on when would they have the event.
Right. Yeah.
Because they could still have the event in the first week of September if they want to. Like, I mean, it's not like it's a surprise when iPhones come out. So, like, lots of people are not buying iPhones in late August to early September anyway because they know there'll be a new one. Mm-hmm. So, if they still want to put iOS 14 out in the middle of September, which they may still want to do, for I don't know what reason, but they may still want to do it, then they will do that, and then they'll do the iPhone, they'll show it off, they'll say they're coming in a month, and that's that. So, I still feel like I can't predict it any differently, even though they've given me that date.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm in the same position.
I'm sorry. Well, no, but that is... Look, it's fortunate, right? You should not be thinking you have extra time in case you don't.
No, I know. And I'm not thinking that. But, it would be nice. It would be nice to know. But I know it's not going to happen. So I'm still approaching this as if, iOS is coming out in mid-September, as usual. That's how I'm approaching this. Maybe I'm a bit slower than usual this year, but it'll get done.
It wouldn't surprise me if they just haven't decided.
That could also be it, right? They could be still collecting feedback from the beta testers. One thing I believe is happening is they want to make sure that whatever they launch as the first public version is in better shape than last year.
Yes.
That I think is the main driving force here. Like whatever we launch to the people who don't have the public beta or the public version has to be in better shape than last year. So
you mean like the shipping Golden Master version, right?
When my mom checks for updates,
what's she gonna get?
Like what's she gonna get? Like that version needs to be better than whatever they did with 13. Like if you guys like just to remember for a second, like what they did last year with the split release, that 13 then was 13.1, which was also iPadOS, and that came out like first they gave us a date and then that date changed. It came out like a couple of days in advance. Like it was kind of messy. And then I was going through these numbers for my review. They had like in 2 months like 8 software updates or something like that. Like it was wild. Just the number of fixes and patches that they had to put out last year.
Because I remember it was crazy for you because you kept having to like rearrange things in the review, like if you deciding if you wanted to, right? Because certain parts weren't available. So here on that, if I was Craig Federighi, right, the way that I would do it is this. Back when months ago, they must have set a target date for iOS 14 based on iPhone shipping, right? Like before delays, they would have had a date, and the date would say September 14th or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. I would still say, right, like let's aim for our original date, and we'll see where we are when we get there. And if when we get to our original date, we feel like we want to spend more time making it rock solid, let's do that up until the date that the iPhone comes out. So like they've given them, it would be like I would be giving us a window of where from the original date to the date when iPhones ship. And we can decide during that period of time if and when we need to continue working on things. That's the way I would do it. Because ultimately, like, they can release at any point up until the new iPhone, Or as they proved last year, a random time after the new iPhone comes out, right? Like, but like, I feel like they have the ability to do for themselves what you're mentioning of like, well, they had a date that they wanted to ship it on, and now they might be able to actually make it even more 100% solid by spending a little bit more time on it. But if it's ready, go for it. I don't know.
This episode of Connected is also brought to you by Pingdom from SolarWinds. Do you have a website? And does that website have things like shopping carts, registration forms, or contact us pages? If you answered yes to these questions, then you need Pingdom. No one wants their critical website transactions to fail. That could mean a bad user experience for people on your site and lost business for you. The good news is you can set up transaction monitoring with Pingdom. It will alert you when cart checkout forms and login pages fail before they affect your customers and your business. Pingdom lets you know the moment any of these have issues in whatever way is best for you. You can customize how you're alerted and who is alerted depending on the severity of the outage. Pingdom cares about your users having the smoothest site experience possible, and if disaster strikes, you'll be the first to know. It's super easy to get started. Go to pingdom.com/relayfm right now for a 14-day free trial with no credit card required. And when you sign up, use the code CONNECTED at checkout to get a huge 30% off your first invoice. Our thanks to Pingdom from SolarWinds for the support of the show and Relay FM.
So we knew that with iOS 14, one of the things that users would get to be able to do is to set their default browser or email client to be not Safari and not Mail. And all we knew is that apps would get a special, basically an entitlement to allow them to do that. Not every app could do it. You kind of had to apply for it. As of this past week, Apple has actually released some of the basic rules that an app would need to follow to be able to be either a new default browser or email client. So I wanted to read some of these kind of rules in basic. Obviously, things get a lot more complicated, but just kind of like high level, these are the things that you'd need to do, and then we can talk about it. And I know, Federico, you've been looking into and thinking about this a bit over the past week. So these are the rules for browsers. Your app must specify the HTTP or HTTPS schemes in its info.plist file, and it cannot redirect a URL to an unexpected location. So your application can't be taking a URL that someone puts into it and sending people to somewhere else, which is great. Your app can't use UI WebView. This is deprecated years ago, and they need to use the Safari engine, which, like the Chrome app uses the Safari engine, for example. And on launch, the app must provide a text field for entering a URL, search tools for finding relevant links on the internet, or curated lists of bookmarks, basic browser tasks. The rules for email apps, they need to specify the mail-to scheme in its info.plist file, so therefore when someone hits that mail-to link, it will open your application. Be able to send a message to any valid email recipient, and be able to receive a message from any email sender. Apps that provide user-controlled incoming mail screening features are permitted. These are the rules. To be granted with the entitlement to become a default browser or email application, you have to send an email to a specific email address at Apple, which are listed in the documentation, which feels like a pretty shady approval process. I had somebody posit this theory to me of like, you've got to assume that they will say, oh, okay, if you're an email app, you now have to do these other 5 things that we haven't told you. Like, you need to support split view. You need to support dark mode, right? Like, who knows? Like, that's how we'll approve you. Well, I don't know. This is just like conspiracies. But it is kind of peculiar that you have to send an email to a random email address.
Is it the trailers at mac.com again?
It's not. But you know what? I bet Google haven't had to send that email.
Isn't it the same process for CarPlay that you need to request approval?
I know you need to request it, but I don't know how you do it. But it is a similar thing. You request to be a CarPlay application, and then you get given this entitlement. Let me see if I can find that out while you do talk about it a little more.
Also, like on the topic of like Apple saying to you, well, we would approve you if only you also supported these features. I think that's an important point, actually, because if you disable the defaults, and especially mail, I wonder what's going to happen to Siri integration. Because right now, if you ask Siri to send an email, obviously it does so with mail. But if you change your default email client, what's going to happen there? I guess that the correct behavior would be if you set your default to be Gmail or Outlook, and if those apps have native Siri integration, you will be able to just have the same functionality. So Gmail or Outlook or Spark, they use the SiriKit integration domain for email messages, and they let you send an email message via voice. Now, Gmail does not integrate with SiriKit, I believe, and we all know how, let's just say, reluctant Google can be in terms of adopting new iOS features. Now, I do believe that a scenario in which I could see Google actually saying, oh, well, now we support split view, drag and drop, and slide over, and Siri, if Apple were to come in and say, well, we really want to approve you. However, we feel like to guarantee the best user experience for being set as a default, you also need to support Siri. So I don't know. I think there's actually something there in terms of, because if you change the default, then people expect to have the same features and the same experience. And part of that experience is also Siri, for sending emails and checking your email from Siri. So I think there's something to the idea of Apple making requests in exchange, in return to those companies applying for this entitlement. I don't think it's totally out of the question. And I think it would actually also make sense, right? You want to be set as default. There's like a minimum threshold of functionality that people expect. Now, obviously, this is not written in the rules. So maybe Apple doesn't actually care about this. And maybe even if you disable, like even if you change the default, but if you ask Siri to send an email, maybe it'll just default to mail. So Apple maybe doesn't care about this, but I think they should. I think it would be the right approach, technically speaking.
I feel like if you ask Siri to send an email, it should do it with your default email app.
I also think so. Yes. With the default that you set, right? Yeah. Just like when you tap on a mail to link, it takes you to your default. If you ask Siri to send an email, it should take you to your default.
Well, but that might be like a backdoor
but this
way
is not
to get
in the
them
guidelines.
to... Well, that's a good point. But I do feel like there may be things in the guidelines, things they will want you to do that are not in the guidelines. Stephen found, by the way,
that are only explained on the phone.
That for CarPlay, not via email anymore. For CarPlay, it's actually like just a form that you fill in the Apple developer account. So it is kind of different in a kind of peculiar way. I think like an email address does seem strange.
Yeah, it seems like they didn't get the form built in time. That CarPlay form says this: if you think your app has the potential to be supported by CarPlay, tell us about it. Before submitting, review the CarPlay app guidelines in the CarPlay app programming guide, and there's a link to that. And you can pick your app type: audio, automaker, communication, EV charging, navigation, parking, or quick food ordering. Some of those are the new types that we got in iOS 14. And then you tell them about your product, and then I assume that you hear back and they say yes or no. They're very picky about what goes into CarPlay for good reason. I don't want games on CarPlay. I don't want the stupid stuff Tesla does. I just want the things that are really useful and helpful.
Maybe they're just assuming they won't get that many requests for the browser and email. Like, really? It probably isn't going to be more than a few hundred for each, I would assume, where CarPlay would be much more, right? I would expect. Like, applications that want to be in CarPlay, whether they should be there or not. But, like, especially because there's so many types of applications that could, in theory, be a CarPlay app.
Can we talk about a specific line from these guidelines regarding email clients?
I would love to.
So they say email apps should be able to receive a message from any email sender. That's okay. Mm-hmm. Apps that provide user-controlled incoming mail screening features are permitted.
What's the point? What's the point of this line?
It's hey. It's giving the nod to
hey.
It's for
hey.
Yeah, but like, what's the point of putting it in there if there's no problem?
It's like, okay. It's like...
So it's like, you don't need to say this if you're only saying it because of hey.
Because now you made me think, wait, was this a potential problem? Why do you need to clarify that this is okay?
It's so strange, right? Like, if you just had the first part of that sentence, people aren't going to go, what about hey? Like, no, like, be able to receive a message from any email sender. Yeah, sure. Every email app should be able to do that. Like, that second part of that sentence is unnecessary.
Yeah, maybe they're just covering their bases, right? Because if you say receive a message from an email sender, and then somebody could like maybe potentially stir up another controversy and say, oh, but what if you have a screening service? Does it mean that Apple is going against hey? I don't know. Maybe that's stretching it though.
I just don't know why they felt the need to put that in there. It's so strange.
It's very odd.
It's so weird.
Also, because isn't it like literally called the screener or something? Like so it really does stand out in those guidelines, because everything else is pretty generic, right? Of course, a browser.
Is there more than one app that does this?
I mean, depending on how you read it, like
the smart inbox.
Yeah, that sort of stuff could fall into this maybe.
But they don't screen email. Like, smart inboxes just resort them.
Yeah, it doesn't screen email.
Something like SaneBox kind of does.
Yeah, but SaneBox isn't an app.
Yeah,
mail.
I don't know. It's for hey. Let's just they don't.
This is for hey. It's
maybe
for hey.
Google Inbox, but that doesn't exist anymore. Does Gmail do it?
Gmail has like the sorting into various inboxes based on
It's not screening.
promotional.
It's not screening, is it?
But it's
just
also not
sorting.
user
This
controlled.
is just for hey.
Yeah. Look, look,
just for
it's
hey.
Jaws' first day.
No, this
as
isn't
the,
Jaws. This is still.
Let me
Phil.
finish my joke, Dad.
Oh, I'm sorry. You can edit me out if you want to.
So it's Jaws' first day as the senior vice president of worldwide marketing, right? Schiller's still over the App Store, but look, Schiller is floating in the pool on top of Apple Park, wearing a robe or probably nothing at all. So Jaws is really in charge of the App Store, right? Schiller's out there just hanging out, and he saw what happened with Hey. He saw that the Hey dust up forced Schiller into early retirement, and he's like, you know what? I'm going to be really clear about this. He just put it in
I
here.
really love this
Yeah.
app.
I love
and I
it.
really want to approve you.
Can't wait to do it.
Well, I mean, yes, this is basically a hey
Hey,
feature right here. Hey, everything else
Feature.
pretty ordinary. I think you cannot use UI WebView. Of course, it was deprecated a couple of years ago. You cannot redirect people like. This rule is in there because, well, what if I'm shipping a custom browser and I take whatever you tap, but I take you to my website instead? Obviously, that is not allowed. You gotta take users to the URL that they tapped. And I think it's interesting, again, for browsers, how they said you gotta have an address bar. So obviously users should be able to tap into a text field and enter any URL. So from the sound of this, it seems like any single domain or website specific web viewers are not considered browsers. So you should always allow the users to tap into the address bar and change the URL. And then they let you choose either you have to offer search or lists of bookmarks. So it doesn't feel like search is mandatory. However, you got to choose between search or bookmarks. So the user needs to be able to either enter a URL or have a way to navigate out of the current page in either via search or via bookmark, which I think
I'm not actually
pretty
completely
okay.
sure about this because the way this is written, it makes it sound like any or all of the... So it says on launch, the app must provide a text field for entering URL, comma, search tools for finding relevant links on the internet, comma, or curated list of bookmarks.
Or...
So is it saying that you don't have to have a text field for a URL? You could just have a curated list of bookmarks and that would be okay? See what I mean? Like it's not completely... Because if you have the info.plist information...
Yeah, it's one of these three. It's one of these three.
Yeah, because they don't need you to type in a URL for you to be able to work as the default browser, because the default browser just needs to be able to open a URL that it's given.
I mean, also, who's going to make a browser without an address bar? Right?
I don't know.
I mean, that... But still, so it's... Yes, you're right. It's one of these three. So you can open a link in a custom browser, but then you must have a way to navigate out of the current page. And that can either be an address bar, a search bar, or bookmarks. Which, okay, that makes sense. But they really want to... I think from the sound of this, it seems like they really don't want the user to be in a situation where they install something, they make it their custom browser, and that custom browser only takes them to a single domain. There's potentially like folks with pretty shady intentions who may be planning that.
So no Mac Stories browser.
No Mac Stories browser is what I'm saying. Yes. No 512 pixel browser either.
I'm going to make a browser. 123 browser.
It only takes you to a Twitter account.
It only takes you to the URL that you tap, or there's a curated list of bookmarks, which is just like no website that is of any use to you. So like you can't browse the web anymore. It's like a focused experience, you know?
Hashtag minimal.
Nice.
Yeah. So
Nice.
like you can't get to anywhere else on the web of use anymore.
Mhm.
That's my
That's cool.
my
That's
elevator
cool.
pitch.
Aside from Myke, I think Google, Microsoft, Mozilla, all these folks will apply. Maybe they will not even apply. Apple is working with them, I bet.
Which they should be. right?
They should be, because obviously this is
important.
this is an actual feature that people want. Like when I was talking to my friends recently, it's like, so, the usual question. So what's new in the next update? And I mean, widgets is a pretty easy sell. People see it and like, oh, that's cool. How can I do that? And also like when you say, oh, you can now change, the default app for links. It's like, oh yeah, I want to use Google Chrome. Like it's a thing that people understand immediately.
I've actually come to the thinking of like changing the default email app is mostly a pointless affair.
It's more, I think people are more excited about the browser.
The browser makes sense. The email app, like what? Like when I tap, I will get a different...
Oh,
like,
are you tapping all these mail to links?
Who's tapping mail to links that often?
I guess when you're like, I don't know, browsing like the hotel website.
But even as I am not a user of the mail app, right? Like it's not like I struggle. I guess the only thing is like, so I no longer need to sign into the mail app with my email accounts. But like, that's it. Like the browser makes sense. Messenger apps make sense. Music apps make more sense, right? Like,
That's
it kind of like...
And those two are still apps,
Yeah.
right? Music and messages.
Yep.
They're starting with email and browsers and maps. Of course, you cannot. I don't think you can change you cannot change the default for maps.
Yeah, I would much prefer maps to email.
Although I gotta say, not completely happy with Google Maps in the past year.
What's wrong with Google Maps?
It's just Google Maps has been making some questionable decisions for me for turn-by-turn directions.
Right.
With this insistence on like taking the road less traveled to save like a couple minutes.
Right, that's Waze.
Yes, it's basically the Waze approach.
Don't they have settings for that kind of stuff though?
No, I cannot find them in Google Maps. Like so many times, Sylvia and I have found ourselves in like these country roads in the middle of nowhere because Google Maps thought that we were going to save 5 minutes. And I'm like, please, let me be on the road where other human beings are driving. I don't want to be stuck in the middle of nowhere where I turn my head and I can see like goats in a field. Like this is not my ideal driving experience. I want to be on an actual road, not in the middle of nowhere. And it happened a few times over the past year, and it didn't used to be this way, Google Maps. Like we actually didn't notice like a change. Like suddenly the default became, oh, let me offer you these unknown roads so that you can save 5 minutes. And I'm like, please just let me be stuck in traffic and I'm going to get there, but at least I will be surrounded by other people.
Yeah, it is definitely, that's a Waze thing. Like, because that's Waze's whole thing, right? Of like using user data to tell you where people are, and then you can route people via places where they're not. But that should be a choice.
It makes me feel very anxious, honestly, like to end up in the middle of nowhere.
Because you're a little bit like, where are you going to send me? Like, where am I going to go?
Yeah, exactly.
Now?
It's like, so I've been anticipating the rollout of the improved Apple Maps here, but I have a bad feeling about it. I think it's going to be another couple of years before we get them in Italy. So,
did they announce more places that they're taking it to? I don't remember the Apple Maps stuff.
Some cities in Japan got it yesterday.
Oh, that's good. That's nice. What about London? Did that ever happen?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I don't think it was. Oh wait. Was it mentioned somewhere that maybe the UK and Ireland? No, maybe I'm making this up. I don't know. I gotta look into it.
A look around got put in Japan yesterday. For someone who's not checking their RSS, you're definitely up on the Apple Maps news. They did say revamped Apple Maps expanding to UK, Ireland, and Canada later this year. So maybe in a few months, Myke, you will get the new map stuff. Because I only use Google Maps because I find it more reliable. Like if Apple have created a reliable system, I would use that instead.
They're saying later this year, so it's a good chance you'll have them by the end of the year.
Well, I'll look forward to trying that.
This episode of Connected is also brought to you by Hover, one of the show's longest-running sponsors. When you have that big idea, where do you go? For a ton of people, Hover is that first big leap because a business or a project starts with a domain name. And Hover has over 300 domain name extensions to choose from. So no matter what you want to build, there's a domain name waiting for you. They have excellent technical support to answer any questions you may have, and they're dedicated to getting you online, not upselling you. Hover has free WHOIS privacy, so the bad guys don't get your info, clean UX and UI all the way throughout, and monthly sales on popular top-level domains. It's easy to see why Hover is the popular choice for people starting businesses. I've got all of my domains over at Hover, including funny ones that come up on the show. It's really quick to get in there, buy it, redirect it to something else. It is just amazingly cleaner and more simple than any other registrar I've ever used. We know that you like user experiences that are intuitive. I know I do, things that work straight out of the box. So you're going to appreciate Hover because that design is really simple, clean, and easy to navigate. So buy your domain and start using it today. Go to hover.com/connected and get a 10% discount on all new purchases. The URL one more time, hover.com/connected. Make a name for yourself with Hover. Our thanks to Hover for the support of the show and Relay FM.
Beta 4, iOS 14 Beta 4 came out. There's been some changes. I'll run through a couple. I think, Federico, you might have some more to add. They've added more widgets. There's an Apple TV widget now, which was, I think I saw you say is like the last widget that they showed off that didn't exist.
Yeah. They showed it off at WWDC, and it wasn't there in the first few betas.
Right, but now we have it. We can now get widgets from third-party apps. It's been a bit of a tease over the last beta cycle because it was like, you can submit them, but they won't work on devices.
Yeah, there was an issue in the beta 3 of Xcode. 12 is version 12 now, that prevented them from working in test flight. But now they are working, so that's nice because now we can finally try them.
Yeah, I've used a couple. One that it's interesting to me is the drafts widget. And I've only been noodling around with drafts recently. I don't really have big thoughts on it. But the thing that I found was interesting was that one of the widget options allows you to kind of set up a bunch of like squares, like buttons you can tap on to take you to things in the application, right? So you can like to a specific note, to a specific area, to a search or whatever. And what I found is like it is incredibly fast from tapping those buttons to getting to that area of the application in a way that I think could be kind of actually pretty cool because you're not like opening the app, tapping. Like I feel it feels very quick. Plus the animation of opening an application from a widget also feels that way as well, right? Like it feels like nice. The app just comes out of the widget. So I don't know. I feel like there could be something kind of fun where like some of these utility applications, like I'm thinking like to-do apps or whatever, if you could say something like OmniFocus with your perspectives or whatever, set a little Mac Stories perspective icon as they are, as the wonderful icons that they are, to like open different perspectives or whatever, and OmniFocus would feel really fast. And so that could be one of the nice things about these widgets is it makes getting in and out of applications feel quick, as well as providing information about them where necessary.
Yeah, and I think judging from what we've seen so far, I think it's pretty clear that given the limitations of WidgetKit this year, we're going to end up with two kinds of widgets, like two sort of macro categories of widgets. Widgets that let you glance at different types of data visualizations. So anything that can be visualized from an app, from your like a step counter to the number of tasks you're supposed to work on, like any kind of visualization. There's going to be one kind, and the other kind, I think, is these kinds of launchers. Like
launchers are back, baby.
Widgets that let you, because that's all they can do, right? Especially in the medium and the large configurations where you can have multiple touch targets. We're going to have like these grids or lists with buttons that take you into different places of an app because they cannot do anything in line. They always need to launch something. So I was using the dark noise widget, for example, and you can configure the widget to choose the sounds that you want to play. And when you tap one, it opens dark noise and plays that sound. And you mentioned drafts, it's one of them. And I've been testing like a bunch of other widgets that have a similar idea of you configure the widget and you choose like the areas of the app that you want to open, and then you have a widget. And on the other side is the more traditional, like glanceable widget. There's one that I'm using called Emoji Countdown. That is a super basic like countdown app that lets you associate an emoji with like an upcoming event in your life, like a birthday or a trip to someplace. And then in the widget you see like a counter for how many days are left and the emoji, and that's all that it is. It's nothing more than that. Or for example, Shahib, I don't remember his last name, is working on the new Twitter client, Aviary. You may think, oh, a new Twitter client in 2020, that's crazy. And it is kind of wild that he's working on it, but I believe Shahib's planning to integrate with the new Twitter API. And Aviary is like actually really, really interesting as a new Twitter client, because it's like a modern Twitter app that uses modern iOS and iPadOS API. So multiple columns, drag and drop, shortcuts and Siri integration, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, is working on this widget that lets you see the latest tweets from your timeline. So I don't think it's possible to configure the widget right now. And maybe, Shahib, if you're listening, consider this a feature request. Maybe it would be nice to configure the widget so that you can see the latest tweets from a particular list, or maybe matching a particular search. So I think it's clear that we're going to end up with these two like primary types of widgets. Either you launch something, so it's like a launcher. And as Myke said, launchers are back. They used to be a thing years ago, and now they're coming back in full fashion. Or
bigger and better than ever.
Bigger and better than ever. Look at that. You can actually have a launcher that occupies the space of 16 icons.
The biggest and bestest one is shortcuts, but you can't compete with that one.
Oh my God. The shortcuts widget. Now the shortcuts widget has a smaller version. So there's a small widget that, however, is not working for me.
No, not working for me either.
The new small widget in Shortcut, it lets you pick a single shortcut that you want to run from the small widget size, which in theory, great idea. However, when I tap the choose button to pick the shortcut, it keeps loading and loading and loading forever because I probably have too many. Anyway, I just wanted to say that I'm glad that legacy widgets are sticking around for now, because given that these are the two types of widgets we're going to have, I still want to keep using something like Tamery, something like pcalc, for example, because that functionality will not be possible this year. And so I'm glad that even in legacy mode, and even though they will be stuck in the today view, I'm still going to use them.
I've just replaced all of my time tracking stuff with shortcuts now.
But it's not like the timer widget is so good. You swipe to the side and you can see the timer like in real time. That's so good.
I know.
You know?
I am finding that I'm leaving more timers on than I used to.
Well, you'll figure why.
Like, oh, it's been going for like 26 hours.
No. Well.
Very productive over there.
You know me.
Yeah, that's the downside. Although some widgets are really beautiful, so it kind of compensates, you know?
I think so. Yeah, the designs that I'm seeing of apps that I'm using or seeing people share, it's like they look so good. And so it's this is kind of what I had hoped would be the case when they showed it off, that like, yes, we'll be taking a step back in some areas, but step forward in others. And maybe at the end of it, we'll just be happy with where they are. Universal search has been improved in the sense that they fixed a kind of weird bug, right, Federico?
You may think it was a bug, or it was an intentional decision that they walked back.
I will consider it a bug because it would have been a very bad decision to make. So.
Well, okay, so the bug was, I tweeted about this last week. The issue was that when you were searching for things in the new, they call it compact search in iOS 14, in the first page of search results, you would only see top matches for things like app names, so you could still use it to launch apps. But anything else that was like content or suggestions from like Siri intelligence, like the trivia questions, for example, everything else was tucked away in a secondary page. And I say that I'm not sure it was a bug because it looked pretty intentional to me, in that there was a button that you needed to press to navigate into a secondary page. It was like a whole interaction that they had built in there. And now that interaction is completely gone from beta 4. So I'm not sure it was a bug when it was like an actual thing that was new and you could use it, and now it's gone. In any case, it's great that search has been fixed, because now when you search for something, anything, there's a single page of results. And sure enough, the new thing in 14 is that at the top of the search results list, whenever you're searching for something that is not the name of a specific app on your device, you get web search suggestions. So like things to open in Google search or whatever your search engine is, which is nice because sometimes you do want to be able to quickly launch a web search. However, now results from other things are back in the first page. So whether you want to open a song or play a song in music or a document in files or any content that's been indexed by search for your application in iOS, now is displayed on the first page. And what is different, I guess, is that search is faster than 13, which it is true, and I like it. I can launch apps faster than before. Web search suggestions, I think, are useful. It's nice to be able to quickly just swipe down on the home screen, type something, and then open a Google search. I think that's cool. And search results have been reorganized so that iOS 14 will try to provide you with what it thinks is a set of top hits for you. But if you disagree with that and you want to see more, in iOS 14 Beta 4, there's a new Show More Results button that when you press it, it doesn't take you into a second page. It just expands inline the list of results. So whether it was a bug or it was intentional, I'm leaning toward the fact that it was intentional given the functionality that was in there. But whatever the case, now it's back to sort of a hybrid of what it used to be and some additions in 14. And now I really, really like it myself. Like now it strikes a really good balance of web searches and launching apps is faster. Some results are more compact, but also all my stuff is in there anyway. So now thumbs up.
Yeah, it's much better now.
And also new in Beta 4, the exposure notification API. So the Apple and Google system for contact tracing and exposure notifications for COVID-19 is back in. Well, no, it wasn't. It never
wasn't
was
in
there.
14.
It wasn't in any previous beta, but now it's in Beta 4. And let me tell you how terrifying it is to get these notifications. Last night I was just chilling and watching Netflix.
Oh, no.
At some point my phone lights up. No, don't worry, I haven't been exposed. That's what I'm getting at. My phone lights up and it's like, exposure notification. I'm like, oh God, what happened? And I look at it and the phone is like, you were not exposed to any. It's like, come on,
why is
you're
it telling
sending me
you
notification to telling me that I was not exposed.
I don't understand.
My heart
What
skipped
notified
a bit
you?
there.
The app?
The system. It had the system logo of the exposure notification API. Did I take a screenshot? Hold on. It notified me to tell me that I was okay. And like, I felt like my heart sank for like 5 seconds there. Did I take a screenshot? Yes, I did. Weekly, the title, COVID-19 exposure logging. And this is the icon of the system. Weekly update. And I'm like, God, imagine me reading this notification. I'm like, oh God, your device did not identify any potential exposures this week.
Why is it doing that?
Why are you sending me these notifications to tell me that?
Tell me nothing, right? Like, tell me nothing until I need to know. That's wild.
Yeah.
I hate that.
It was terrifying. And I'm sending you the screenshot now. It was absolutely terrifying to see this logo and this notification pop up on my phone to tell me that I was okay. Anyway, it's cool that we can now use our government-issued app again in iOS 14.
What happened to the second phase?
What do you mean?
So when they announced this, that a second phase would be coming in, quote, the coming months, which was that it was going to be in the operating system instead of needing applications.
I wonder what happened.
So I'll read from the FAQ. After the operating system update is installed and the user has opted in, the system will send out and listen for Bluetooth beacons as in the first phase, but without requiring an app to be installed. If a match is detected, the user will be notified, and if the user is not already downloaded an official public health authority app, they will be prompted to download an official app and advised on next steps. So this is the idea that, so currently, you need to download an application to be able for the beacons to start looking for each other. But then there was going to be this second part where the operating system would just do it. Now, my thought was that's going to be in iOS 14, but they haven't mentioned that yet.
Yeah, I forgot there was supposed to be a phase 2.
Which is a better thing, which is that the operating system is just constantly doing it, and then you download an application if and when a match is detected.
Yeah.
So here's my question to you. That notification that you got, had you ever gotten that before?
No.
So maybe that is phase 2.
Maybe.
Because...
Did I just accidentally discover a major new feature?
Maybe.
And talked about it on Connected?
Maybe. Because that's the system doing it.
Well, so I'm on the newest iOS 14 beta. Tennessee, many states here in the U.S., is deciding not to do it. 9 to 5, Zach over there has been keeping up with this. And if I go into the settings section, I saw it, exposure notifications, and it says exposure notifications are off. If you turn them on, your public health authority can notify you of possible exposure to COVID-19. You can turn this on by downloading their app in the App Store. So at least in the current beta, it is not a system feature.
I agree with that because I get the similar thing, right? They're off, and then it tells me if I turn them on. But Federico already has them on. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. We got to look into it.
I still am waiting to see what they do with that. When Apple and Google announced it, I think they thought it was going to be met more positively than it ended up being met, right? And I wonder if they've changed their tack on it all.
Well, you got to account for the sad truth of a large portion of the public, both in the US and in Italy and elsewhere, having this new skepticism is a mild way to put it around COVID-19 and really our official app, last time I checked, Italy has 60 million people. It was downloaded less than 2 million times. So, unfortunately.
And that's why it needs to be in the operating system, right?
Exactly.
But then people need to still accept it.
Yeah, it's kind of sad, really, that... Anyway, let's talk about something else. We mentioned the new small widget for shortcuts. Eventually, I hope to get it working on my device. Now, this next one, I was told that actually was available starting in beta 1, but we never mentioned it, and I missed that it was available. There's a new accessibility setting for pointer control in iPadOS 14, where you can now enable, this is under Settings, Accessibility Pointer Control, double tap to drag. So now you can choose to enable this option, and you can just double tap, then start dragging anything on screen. This applies to files, text, icons on the home screen. Instead of having to long press and hold, then drag away, you can just quickly double tap, and without letting go, after you just tap twice, you can just start moving your finger and you will drag. I like it. It's a nice option to have. You can choose to have drag lock enabled or not. I think I really like this as an option, and I think I'm going to try and use it for a while because it does feel a lot faster than long pressing and holding to drag away.
I think this is the same on the Mac. This is a setting on the Mac.
On the Mac, you can also 3-finger drag,
right,
which I know that a lot of people have been telling me in my mentions, can you also enable 3-finger drag? Unfortunately, that's not possible now. And I want to say maybe because 3-finger are supported on iPadOS on the Magic Keyboard for swipe gestures. I don't know how Apple feels about a continuous drag gesture with 3 fingers, given that the trackpad is kind of small. And also, it would conflict with the system gesture for switching between apps, right? The 3 fingers horizontal swipe, I think. So, yeah, that's not possible now. But you can enable double tap to drag, which I think is kind of cool.
Which I guess is maybe more useful
Yeah.
It doesn't conflict with anything on iOS. At least on the Mac, the double tap will conflict with double tapping. But there is no double tapping on iOS, so...
Yeah.
Right? So that's actually pretty cool.
I'm trying to think, is there any double tapping on iOS?
I can't think of it.
No.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
This is so far, I will say, has been the buggiest version for me on my iPhone.
Oh no.
I'm just having a terrible time, guys. So this morning, my alarms didn't go off to wake up.
Oh no.
They just didn't happen. And when I used my iPhone in the morning, like everything was going super slow and sluggish. I had to reboot my phone and it worked. And I tested an alarm and the alarm did work. So like I think the phone just got itself into some horrible state overnight where everything was like freezing. So that was part one. I'm having serious issues with the camera. Like really big ones. So if you open the camera app and you switch from photo to portrait, it kind of goes blurry and then...
Yes.
Right? A lot of the time I open the camera and it just keeps doing that blurry thing over and over again, like it's trying to switch mode, but it's not doing it. Sometimes my camera works, sometimes my camera doesn't work. And that's been a real issue that I've had. And then the sharing suggestions when you share... Oh, they've come back.
They're
back.
back.
Randomly, I did nothing, and now they're back again. So I'm finding like a weird set of stuff that keeps happening to me. I keep rebooting my phone, and sometimes it makes things better. But I've not had any significant issues on any other beta, and I have on this one. So just wanted to say this is a case of like, yeah, I know it's a beta, and I'm just saying because we talk about the betas here a lot, they're still not perfect. So like, be aware.
So yeah, please. I hope that the bugs continue so that this comes out later than usual.
Is that what you want? Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry, Myke. But I really hope you run into more bugs.
Oh, that's nice, isn't it?
No, but I mean, this is bad, right? Because it was supposed to be the opposite. Like, it was supposed to be... Remember the report where
I'll say, look, it's been great, right? Like, I expect that bugs will get introduced throughout the beta process, right? But, like, so far, it's been absolutely rock solid for me. But I've just hit a few this time.
Okay. Yeah, I want to say, like, personally, for me, it's been okay, not perfect. I'm not sure if and this is why I'm not writing this chapter until early September. I'm not sure if they are reaching iOS 12 level of, like, stability. Because iOS 12, I remember they did a really good job. And because that was one of the like core features that year. Like, we really like tried to improve the performance and we fixed a lot of bugs. I'm not sure if 14 is up to that standard. So yeah, it's not like, personally for me, it hasn't been bad. I haven't run into like, there's a bunch of bugs, a bunch of glitches, some surprising decisions like search, but otherwise pretty okay. But I'm not sure I would call it as stable or as polished as 12.
Yeah, and I'm still finding some shortcuts loading very slowly from the widget.
Yeah,
that's been a persistent issue that I've had.
Some of my shortcuts broke. Some of my shortcuts have empty variables now, which I noticed because like I was tapping the shortcuts and they were doing nothing. And I was like, why are you doing nothing? And then I went in there and sure enough, the variable fields were empty.
I've had some, not where the variables are empty, but the variables are wrong. Like they were magic variables where like it wasn't pulling in incorrect data. It just wasn't set as the right magic variable. Like something got reset and it was kind of like not empty, but almost like it was an empty magic variable. It said a thing, but it wasn't doing the thing that I thought it was supposed to be doing. I had to go in and edit the magic variable and then it would fix itself. So, but like, look, these are not complaints. These are just, we're just talking about our experiences.
Yeah. You're just filing a radar on a podcast.
Yeah. Or feedbacks. I'm filing a feedbacks, right here. I'm sorry. I don't file them.
I sometimes do when I feel very strongly about them.
I haven't felt strongly about anything. Like I'm seeing things that are frustrating to me. And I've done it in the past, right? Where like I have really felt like something had to change and like I really believed in it. But like all the things that I'm running into, it's like they're bugs. I'm sure somebody else is experiencing them. If my camera thing persists through to beta 5, then I will file a feedback. But, I'm kind of like, I'm sure it will get fixed.
Yeah,
but look, I will say it again.
We talk about them.
I'm talking
right?
about it. I know people at Apple listen to this show. If you work at Apple and you hear what I'm saying and it sounds really bad, now you know. Right?
We're talking about them, right? We're bringing attention to them. And I think, sometimes when I feel very strongly about something, I would, or maybe, and that's especially true for like very bad bugs, as you remember my iCloud stuff last year, I actually need to collaborate with like an Apple engineer who's like asking me for a sysdiagnose or like multiple crash reports, that kind of stuff. I obviously want to go in there and make sure that I file a detailed piece of feedback. But otherwise, I think it's the normal cycle of things where Apple pays attention to folks who have an audience and talk about these new features and what they think about the new features and the issues that they have with an audience. So I think it's just the way things are, and I think it works pretty okay for them.
Safari and Big Sur supports 4K YouTube videos.
Woo! Nice.
I've been watching YouTube videos in 4K on my iPhone and my iPad for the last 3 or 4 weeks. This is something that I came across, as well as Safari. And something I've noticed, 2160p, 4K, it's not worth it on the iPhone. 1440 does the job, right? But when I have tried it at 2160, my phone gets really hot in one very specific place.
That's the 4K chip.
I know it must be the processor, right? This is where the system on the chip is, but it's almost like I can feel the little square that is hot, right? Like it's not like the whole thing warms up, like it gets very hot in a very specific area, which is why I've ended up just setting it to 1440p. But watching 4K videos on my 12.9-inch iPad, on my 11, my 12.9 still not on the beta, or on my 11-inch iPad, is really nice. It looks really good. And also, just watching 4K YouTube videos in a web browser is also really great. I don't know exactly what had to happen for them to do this. It seems like Apple is supporting VP9 in some way, because when I tweeted about this a few weeks ago, people said go enable this setting, and you can see that the codec that the MKBHD video in question that I was watching said VP9. So it's interesting to me that this happened with the shipping YouTube app on iOS 14, but if it works, it works. So yeah, I love it. I love being able to watch them in better quality now.
Yeah. This is one of the reasons why this is one of those cases for me of, is it called the butterfly effect? Like a small thing that has much larger and unexpected consequences. Is it called that? Okay.
A butterfly flaps its wings in Asia and there's an earthquake in California or whatever.
Yeah, it's basically that. And also this single thing of Apple adopting 4K YouTube playback on iOS, you would say, okay, yeah, it's nice, but what could possibly happen to your life? Well, my bedroom was... No, we redid our bedroom because I really wanted to have a Mac Mini, because I really wanted to have a desk in a particular location, because the Mac Mini, among other things, would also run YouTube DL to download 4K content from YouTube and allow me to watch 4K stuff on YouTube. Now, of course, there are other reasons why I needed to get a new Mac and why I decided to bring a Mac to get a Mac Mini. At the time, it was the best option for me. However, now I'm thinking, well, one of the big reasons why this Mac Mini is always on during the day is because I use it to download 4K stuff, because I want to watch 4K stuff on my iPad Pro.
And how are you watching those videos?
I put them in Plex.
Okay, cool.
I download them and put them into
Plex. Yeah.
But now, the Mac Mini, I'm using a few times a week to record the shows, but as a server, I don't have them, I don't have a lot of things in Homebridge anymore, and I'm not going to use YouTube DL anymore. So like I'm thinking, is the Mac Mini still the best option for me?
You know, I'm so pleased you've said this because I it's something that I've not wanted to admit for a while, and now I can admit it safely. So I also bought a Mac Mini to do home server things, right? I never did any of them.
There you go.
That Mac Mini, its purpose was so I could sometimes use like either Luna Display or screens on my iPad to do something on a Mac that I couldn't do on iOS. I'm really pleased I bought that Mac Mini because it's now the machine that I'm using here at Mega Studio because, you know, my whole setup can't be put into place the way that I wanted. But I had like aspirations of a Mac Mini home server lifestyle that just never came to fruition.
Yeah. So now I did use it as a server. I did use it for sure. Like I really used YouTube DL.
Yeah, no,
and I had a lot.
I had all of those dreams, right? That I was going to do all that. I was going to set up Homebridge, and I was too lazy. I never did any of it.
Yeah, that doesn't really surprise me. You don't strike me as the server type of guy. But I did use it, and now I don't anymore. And I'm like, okay, is this still the best computer for me? And because of this, do I still need it? Like, yeah, I still need a desk and I still need a display, but like, I don't know. I could be any other Mac at this point. I don't know. I like the Mac Mini, but you know.
I mean, are you thinking about getting a laptop? Like, what are you?
I don't know. Should I? I have no idea. Like, should I get a laptop? No, I shouldn't get a laptop. Like, this
Not
is
now.
just not now. But like when the first Apple Silicon Macs come out, should I reconsider?
When the first Apple Silicon Macs come out, you should get one anyway. Just because it's going to be so interesting and weird, and like iOS apps running on the Mac. Maybe you move back to the Mac.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine that.
Look, for realsies right now, like
For realsies.
there is a non-zero chance that if that experience is good, I may move back to the Mac.
Wow, that's a big statement for the end of the show.
That experience has to be very good, but I would just say I am spending more time in front of a Mac again because of the studio. Like when I'm here, and this may change, right? It's just because I have, if you may remember, maybe you didn't know, in my studio that I'm in now, I have two desks. One is my recording desk, and then one is what will be my work desk. And my work desk will be set up with a permanent iPad station and a permanent Mac station. But I'm not using that desk right now because I can't bring the equipment here that I wanted to, like my iMac Pro or whatever. So when I'm at the studio, I'm only sitting at one desk, which is a much smaller desk, which I just have a Mac on, and it doesn't really have the space that I would want to comfortably be able to use an iPad on as well, because I've got like a keyboard here and a Wacom tablet and like all the stuff that I need when I'm doing Mac-based work, right? So when I'm at the studio and I'm here for like 3 days a week now, most weeks at least, and I'm here for like 8 hours a day, I'm pretty much just working on the Mac for most of that time. I don't prefer it, but it's just the situation that I'm in. I will say today, when I wanted to do the show notes for this show, I went and sat on a chair that I have here and did them on my iPad, because that workflow is way better for me to do on iOS. It just sucks on the Mac, the way that I like to do things. But if I can get all of my iOS apps the way that I want them and it works really well, I don't know. What I'm saying is the jury is out on that one. But to go back to the point at hand, I think it would be really useful for you to be able to understand what that experience is like, Federico.
I don't think you're wrong, especially because now I feel less attached to this Mac Mini on a daily basis. Like I've gone, since I started using iOS 14, I've gone more, and since I really decreased my usage of Homebridge, I've gone multiple days when I was not recording any show. Like with the Mac Mini, it was just turned off all day, like for multiple consecutive days. I don't know. You know, I'm thinking about it.
Federico, though, so pros and cons getting rid of the Mac Mini. You could get rid of would you get rid of the display, the LG 4K?
See, I don't know, because I kind of like it as a display, but it's also kind of ugly.
It is.
And I'll never fully appreciate it. And I know that I would like to have something that I can use with the iPad Pro. because
I really love my Dell display that I have, by the way. Like, it's a nice looking display. Just wanted to say that for the point of saying it. I have no complaints about my Dell display.
I would say if you're going to get rid of the external display, yeah, like a notebook would be nice. It'd be smaller. Wouldn't it be like this whole setup in your bedroom, right? It would just be a computer you could put in a drawer when you're not using it. Mac Minis are quiet. Laptops aren't always quiet, but hopefully the Apple Silicon ones won't be that big of a deal. You know, I worry about fan noise when you record in a hot room, but it's not like you'd be going to a 16-inch MacBook Pro. I mean, that thing can get loud. So that would be my one concern is noise. But if you're going to keep the display anyways, I don't see why you would need to replace the Mac Mini outright. I, with the caveat of you should totally have an Mac when they come out because you need to cover iOS apps on the Mac.
Okay. Wow, I cannot believe that there's a good chance that I may be purchasing a Mac in 2020. Wow. Huh.
Well, we'll just keep tabs on that. So.
Okay.
All right. If you want to find our show notes this week, they're on the web at relay.fm/connected/306. Lots of stuff there that we have spoken about. There's also some other fun activities you can take part in on our website. You can send us an email with feedback or follow-up. There's a link right at the top to become a member. To sign up for Connected Pro, you get this show with no ads and extra content, which is a lot of fun. You can find us over on Twitter. You can find Myke there as IMYKE. Myke hosts a bunch of shows here on Relay FM. Myke, name a show you host.
The Test Drivers.
You've said that 3 weeks in a row.
Darn it. I don't know then.
It's your newest one. It's just on your mind.
Yeah. And what else do I host? Cortex.
I feel like I'm catching you off guard every time I ask you that. I've been doing it for a month now.
Yeah, I feel like I should be prepared, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I should make a shortcut that does a random
randomly
podcast.
Generates. Yeah, that's good. Well, it's not truly a random generator. You're not making up new podcast names. It's just choosing from a dictionary.
But doing it at random.
At random. You can find Federico on Twitter as Viticci, Viticci, and he is the editor-in-chief of MacStories.net, which will be home of his iOS 14 review sometime later this year.
The pressure, yes.
Now you're committed, now that I've said it here. You can find me on Twitter as ISMH and my writing over at 512pixels.net. I'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Ahrefs, Pingdom, and Hover. Until next time, gentlemen, say goodbye.
Arrivederci.
Cheerio.
Bye, y'all.